Okay, so here we actually have a mono green standard deck, and yeah, it's pretty cool. We haven't had mono green in standard in quite a while, so to have an aggressive mono green deck and for it to be good is pretty refreshing. So this is the deck. The mana base is very simple. It's almost all forests. There's 4 Hashep Oasis, which sometimes produces green. The drawback of losing a life does come up, but the upside is greater in that you can sack it to give a dude +3/+3. And then 1 Scavenger Grounds. That's the only non-green source, kind of similar to some of the other monocolored decks you're seeing, and you're seeing many more monocolored decks in standard, and part of the reason for that is these heavy hitters in Dominaria, these triple colored creatures. Steelleaf Champion is the biggest incentive to be mono green. So 3 mana 5/4 creature, bang. You're already getting a ton of bang for your buck. And then the fact that it can't be blocked by 2-power creatures is very relevant. Cards like Gifted Aetherborn can no longer jump in the way of your huge monster. And now we also have Llanowar Elves, so you can go Llanowar Elves into Steelleaf Champion. Llanowar Elves being a premium 1-mana creature and really helps this deck fire on all cylinders. Extremely important. You really want one in your opening hand. Helps with the explosiveness of the deck. So this isn't actually an energy deck, but there are 4 copies of Greenbelt Rampager. So it's just a 3/4. Like sometimes you'll play it on 1, then you'll just play it a couple more times, and you get a 3/4 out of the deal for a reasonable mana cost. So even though there's not that much energy stuff, there is the Aethersphere Harvesters, and as a 3/4, it's pretty good. You can play it, crew a Heart of Kiran, and then it comes back to your hand. So you can do that little trick. Or Skysovereign. It works with that as well. Blossoming Defense is your catch-all pump spells / way of protecting your creature. We've seen that one in a lot of green mid-range aggressive decks over the past year or so. And then we've got our Explore threats. So the Branchwalker and the Jadelight Ranger just help smooth out your draws, provide a little bit of card advantage. We also have a suite of flying vehicles. Okay, so if your opponent is clogging up the ground, you can always get through in the air, and these cards are just generically powerful. Heart of Kiran, Harvester can gain you some life. It also allows for your smaller dudes like Llanowar Elves to be able to crew a vehicle. And then Skysovereign at more of the top of the curve to ping down a dude and kind of take over the game that way, dealing 3 damage immediately when it comes into play, and then being able to swing for kind of turn the tables when it starts to attack. Ronus is a 1-of. It's a powerful card because a lot of times you're able to get a 4-power creature to play with something like a Heart of Kiran or a Steelleaf Champion, and then the ability is also good on it. The fact that it is a god and it's legendary means there's only 1 copy, but it is good. You can only play so many 3-mana cards in the deck. So we've got Verdurous Gearhulk and Skysovereign as part of the top-end finishers. Walking Ballista, just, pretty much every deck at this point has a reason to have Walking Ballista in it. Card just does it all. At 2 mana, it's a removal spell. At 4 mana, it's a removal, and you still have your creature in play. It's a mana sink. So yeah, there's 3 of those. And then here's the big daddy, Ghalta Primal Hunter. It can come down very early in the game, pretty consistently on turn 4 actually, with a decent draw. And yeah, it turns out a 12/12 Trampler is not that easy to answer in this format, especially when there's a lot of green decks without a ton of removal. It pretty much trumps any sort of mirror match. So in terms of the sideboard, Prey Upon, well, we're mono green, so we don't have access to the best removal spells, but hey, 1 mana fight when you have a bunch of huge creatures is actually pretty good. Plummet for your Lyras out there, your flying annoying flyers. Heroic Intervention is good against sweepers and decks with lots of removal. Silent Gravestone is pretty good against Godfarer's Gift because it stops your opponent from being able to target stuff in their graveyard. Deathgorge Scavenger is also another graveyard disruption tool, but it also is a life gain tool, so it does a couple different things. Thrashing Brontodon. It turns out that artifact and enchantment removal is quite important right now in Standard. So you definitely want access to some. This deck has gone for the Brontodon. Lifecaster's Bestiaria is good in your slower matchups where the game can get drawn out a little bit. Same thing with Nissa Vital Force. Arborback Stomper is a good card to go over the top of the aggressive decks. And then the Immortal Sun is good for your mid-range and control matchups as well. So, yep, mono green in Standard. Shall we see how it goes? Alright, so we are on the draw here. Our opponent looks like they have Mulligan to start off. This is, yeah, just not enough action. I don't think the Rampager isn't going to be able to come down until at the earliest turn 3. Yeah, just too many lands, I think, for what we're really looking for. We'd like something a little bit more explosive. Our opponent took a mulligan, so I think we're happier with this 6, actually. Even though it's only 1 land, we can hopefully scry into a land, and then, you know, just the potential of a turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion makes this seem keepable. Okay, great. So we can play that Forest on turn 1, which is exactly what we want. Our opponent's let off with Mountain, though, so that could mean a potential burn spell for Llanowar Elves. Hopefully not. Okay, so nothing like a shock there. Does seem to be mono red. But I think we just get in the Steel Leaf Champion. The other option would be a Jadelight Ranger. But yeah, I think we just play the Steel Leaf for sure. It would basically take multiple spells to get this guy off the table. And just being a 5/4, it's going to hit really hard. We don't want our opponent to kill the Llanowar Elves here, though, because that could potentially turn off our other 3-mana plays. This is interesting. So we could block the 3/1. The issue with doing that, though, is if our opponent plays a burn spell on this champion after combat, that could get our champion off the board. On the flip side, if they do that, they're not using a burn spell on the Llanowar Elves, which is also pretty important. I think it's weird. I'm not sure this is right, but I do want to block because reason being is that we want our Llanowar Elves to stay around, and so we're saving 2 damage, and then we're also saving potentially more damage. Okay, so our opponent actually does have the Goblin Chain Whirler. So our Steel Leaf still stays in play, so the block ended up being correct. And we drew another Forest, which is pretty much what we wanted here. I think so. We have the option of starting to get aggressive. The other option is to just play a second Steel Leaf Champion and simply pass the turn. Both options are pretty compelling here. So if we attack for 5 and then play the Steel Leaf Champion, it once again opens us up more to opposing removal. So, yeah, there's no easy decision here. I think I'm gonna try playing defensively though, because we do have to take damage off of our Haship Oasis to get this champion into play, and now we have multiple blockers for whatever our opponent might throw at us. So it is Hazoret, but Hazoret cannot get into the red zone this turn. So it means that our opponent isn't attacking us. We drew a boat. So now I think we have to try to turn the corner, because it's essentially a 2-turn clock with both of our Steel Leaf champions. So I like getting in and then following. So we have a choice of what to follow up with. We would like to not die this turn. That would be optimal. I think we want to play the Jadelight though. We're pretty likely to find another land with it, which is what we would like. So yeah, I'm just gonna bin. Okay, so we found another land, so that means now we have Blossoming Defense mana available to us. So I think the plan is basically to survive. We're in survival mode now, and we're gonna try to kill our opponent on the following turn. If our opponent decides to attack with all of their creatures, well, they have to commit something first to the board. So it's going to be a Chain Whirler. They're trying to get the Hazoret turned on, essentially, so that it can attack. They can attack with Kari Zev here. Looks like one of the Chain Whirlers are going to get in. So we could chump, but I think for sure we just take this. Seems like an easy decision, because assuming our opponent does not have a 1-mana burn spell in hand, we actually should have lethal on this following turn here. Being that we have the Blossoming Defense, we have the Walking Ballista. We do get blown out by a 1-mana spell. But the way our opponents played this game, it seems fairly unlikely for them to actually have it. I don't see a reason to play the Skysovereign or the Walking Ballista before attacking. So I think we just attack with everything. Like, we don't really want to sit back on defense with the Hazoret. Our opponent can. Alright, so it looks like our opponent does have a shock. So that's going to go at our face. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean we're straight up dead, though. Because we have the Blossoming Defense and the Ballista. So we could make the Steel Leaf into a 7-power. Unfortunately, that would not be good enough. So our plan should be to play the Blossoming Defense, probably on the Jadelight Ranger here. And then we can run out the Ballista and try to stay alive. Seems like the play. Yeah, unfortunately we're just one short with the play of Blossoming Defense on Steel Leaf. Yep, okay, I guess we go with this line. Yeah, I mean, maybe we should have just played Skysovereign there. But I'm not actually sure that would have been better than this. Because we're still alive here. We can block Hazoret and then shoot down the token from Karizev. So we're only, that way we're only taking 6, even with a Hazoret activation. I mean, there's definitely plenty of cards that are gonna be lethal for our opponent, but it looks like, okay, just Karizev is coming in. So that means they are holding back Hazoret on defense. In that case, I like just getting rid of the token here and playing Skysovereign next turn so we can win on the following turn, essentially. We can let the Hazoret stay home. Although now we drew Walking Ballista, so that potentially changes the math. Let's see. We can also just kill this Goblin Chain Whirler with Skysovereign and go for lethal. Well, we're gonna. I think we do that actually. Let's see. Yeah, if our opponent had a burn spell, they would have just gotten the Walking Ballista off the board there. So they should not have. They should not have a burn spell in hand, which means that we should be able to lethal them this turn. And the reason why it is lethal is because our opponent can throw something at us, block the Steel Leaf. Yeah, so, okay, cool. Not sure if I played it perfectly, but it's definitely a tight game there. Okay, so we want the life gain package, which is the two copies of Deathgorge Scavenger. And we want the Arborek Stomper as a big gain life card. Other options, the Brontodons are okay as just big butts. Bestiary is a little bit slow. Immortal Sun, most of this other stuff we're not really looking for. It's kind of slow in the matchup. So, in terms of what we want to be taking out, the Ghaltas, I'm fine with trimming on them. Sometimes they're kind of hard to actually get into play because of all the removal the red deck brings to the table. If we're able to get one onto the battlefield, clearly they're going to be very good. Just a huge body that's going to end the game quite quickly. The artifacts, they're a little bit vulnerable to Abrade in this matchup, but they also have a high upside. So, yeah, Skysovereign was good for us in that game, but it's a little bit slow. I'm going to cut one copy, and then I'm going to cut one copy of Greenbelt Rampager. This isn't a full-blown energy deck. It's not a card that comes down on turn 1. So, yeah, just kind of shaving creatures here or there. Still keeping in the most of the artifacts. Llanowar Elves are a little bit awkward because of the Goblin Chain Whirlers, but they're still just one of the best cards in the deck. So I don't like cutting on those. This is not a great hand, but it's still a keep. Walking Ballista on 2 is a little bit slow, but we do have some life gain with the Scavenger. So if our opponent, so our opponent does have Karizev. This is where things get tricky, because if our opponent has a Chain Whirler, the Walking Ballista is going to be bad. However, we just really are forced to put something on the board, I believe, which is why I'm going to play it out here. I mean, when red is on the play, if they have their really good draws, you just kind of have to hope they don't have their nut draws. So yeah, if they play a Chain Whirler, it's good. Shock, we're fine with. I mean, you know, it sets up. Now our opponents use the Shock on the Ballista. They might not have one for one of our follow-up creatures. All right, so we take 3. So now we're going to have a choice in terms of what creature to follow up with. Because they use the Shock on the Ballista, there's a decent chance that our opponent has more removal. So I think I like playing the Jadelight out. Heart of Kiran is an interesting one. It does potentially work well with Ronus. It's also kind of slow at this point. I think I'm going to bin it. Expecting additional removal. Although our opponent didn't play an end of turn burn spell. So this could be Chandra. That would be worst case scenario. Okay, Earthshaker Kenra that's okay. We can trade Jadelight for Kenra and then eat the okay, so interesting. Our opponent did have an Abrade but didn't play it immediately last turn. So we take a decent chunk on this hit. But now maybe our opponent is out of removal. We're definitely glad we bin that one Heart of Kiran. Wow, because there's another one. Yeah, I think we go for the Death Gorge here. It is the highest upside play. Just because if our opponent does not have removal for it, we're able to gain life and kind of offset some of our opponent's attacks. And then next turn, Heart plus Ronus would be good, but bang. All right, Glorybringer. So that was what we did not want to see. Our opponent's not exerting. Well, I guess we just have to take this. Doesn't feel good at all, but so we go to 5. We can go up to 7 with the Death Gorge attack. So yeah, I guess we go up to 7. And then we can follow up with Heart of Kiran and Ronus. So Heart is able to block the Glorybringer here. And we can crew it with the Ronus. Unfortunately, when we do that, it means that the Ronus can't actually block. So we're very close to being just straight up dead. So yep, we're gonna go for the crew. So I think we put Heart of Kiran on. Yeah, we have to put Heart of Kiran on Glorybringer. Oh, yep. So Shock is actually Xaxes, I believe. Yep. Okay. Game 3. So we are going to be on the play. Prey Upon does get better on the play. If we're able to kill some of the more significant threats. So I like the Greenbelt Rampagers a bit more when we are on the play. I think we want the Prey Upons as well. Once again, the Ghaltas are tricky. Really good if you can get them into play, but it's super hard to actually do that. The 1 toughness Explore guys are also tricky because if they only end up being 1 toughness, then they can get Chain Whirlered. So I'm going to board out a couple of Branch Walkers for that reason. And just kind of do a little bit of shaving. Alright, so yeah, I think this is what we signed up for. Get to Greenbelt turn 1 and then get the Greenbelt into play on turn 2, which is why I like them better on the play. Just because on the draw, turn 2 Greenbelt is not as exciting when you're facing off against like a Karizev or something like that. Okay. Alright, yeah. Second one, clearly not as good. But we do get to get one of them out there. And then follow up with probably the Steel Leaf Champion. Try to get aggressive. If our opponent attacks, they're representing a removal spell here. I think we still block it though, because they can use the removal spell and just put counters on the Rampager anyways. So we just kind of force out the removal. Okay, that's fine, because we just have to kind of slog through these burn spells once our opponent has that Soulscar Mage in play. So yeah, we're hoping that. Okay, so if our opponent attacks, they're representing another 3 damage burn spell. This time I like taking it. Yeah, I think we take it here. They did have the Karizev to follow up with, which is pretty good. So we have the option of Jadelight or Greenbelt here. But I think we're kind of forced to be aggressive. So I like this attack. And then so we would have to commit a decent chunk of mana to actually get the Greenbelt into play. Although it might be worth it just because it makes our opponent's turn 4 a little bit more awkward. Yeah, this is kind of a close call. All right, let's go with the Greenbelt. So it does cost us 3 mana to get it in, but we get the 3/4 in, which is going to be, you know, if say we hit 2 lands off the Jadelight and our opponent played a Chain Whirler, that would be almost a disaster for us. So this is kind of the conservative option. There's a Lightning Strike, which doesn't actually outright kill the Greenbelt. Although, okay, Earthshaker as a follow-up does make sense. But now we do have this Verdurous Gearhulk that we've been holding on to. So we can take a sizable hit this turn. In fact, we have no choice but to take this hit. But then we have choices in terms of how to distribute the counters now. So we definitely slam the Gearhulk. And I think we want to probably hold the Greenbelt. I like holding the Greenbelt on defense. So putting a couple counters on the Greenbelt. Let's see, if we go full blown on the offensive, Is there a way we truly get blown out? I guess a Braid plus Lightning. So if our opponent had a Braid the Gearhulk and then Lightning Strike us, that would put us to 9, 3, 3, 2. That's only a total of 8. So maybe we would only go to 1 in that spot. I think we want to definitely get the Steel Leaf Champion out of range of a Braid. So if we go 2 and 2, I think I like 2 and 2. All right, let's try 2 and 2. And I think I like attacking with both because it makes the Steel Leaf Champion lethal on its own for next turn. Yeah, okay. So we're going to attack with both here. It would take a pretty absurd sequence for our opponent to be able to kill us. This turn, something like Shock, a Braid. If it's something like a Glorybringer, it's actually not going to work for our opponent because they actually have no blocks on the Steel Leaf. Although I guess what they could do is they could exert Glorybringer to put some counters on the Steel Leaf Champion. So yeah, we'll have to see what our opponent's got, but I like our spot a lot here. I think our opponent's on the back foot for sure. Maybe we should have just fully loaded up on the Steel Leaf. Just make it a 9 power there. But if our opponent then had something like a Goblin Chain Whirler for blocks, and also to get rid of the Greenbelt, that would be rough. That would be rough. So I think this line definitely hedged. It was a hedging line, and yeah, the deck seems sweet. It puts our opponent to the test to actually have multiple spells here in order to be able to win. So yes, actually our opponent does have the Glorybringer. They cannot exert it on the Verdurous Gearhulk though. So they're going to exert on the Steel Leaf Champion. That makes sense. So we take the 4, but the Glorybringer won't be untapping on the following turn. There's a Ghalta. What does this do? Well, I guess there's no... Let's see. Ghalta... Yeah, Ghalta seems really nice right here. I guess we can play Jadelight first. So let's do that. Okay, we got a pair of lands. So we can play Ghalta. Yeah, let's do that. And Ghalta should win us the game next turn. So we don't want to be too aggressive with our attacks. I think we just get in with the Steel Leaf Champion. Yeah, that seems right. And now we just, yeah, it would basically take some sort of threat-in effect, because once a Ghalta actually gets into play and is able to attack, the game ends quite quickly after that. So Aethersphere Harvester it's a card. Our opponent can use it on defense and gain life. There's a Blossoming Defense. So here I think we have lethal, but it's one of those situations where we're turning them sideways. You know, like there's no other. We're getting in there. I believe it is lethal. All right, so doing the count, Aethersphere Harvester makes our opponent go up to 6. They have to tap something in order to crew it. Yeah, it's lethal, even no matter what. Especially the Blossoming Defense gives us even that additional protection, so that is going to be. All right, we are going to play here. See what the hand looks like. Okay, yeah, I'm going to keep this. I mean, we do have 2 Blossoming Defenses, which normally you only really want 1. But certainly it depends. They're very situational. Sometimes multiples can be quite good. We are going to need to draw a 3rd land. Just to make our draw good of Heart of Kiran into Jadelight Ranger. So our opponent did end up taking a couple of mulligans, actually, but it doesn't mean we have everything locked up. It looks like, okay, it's going to be the mirror. Interesting. So since we drew the 2nd land, I do think we want to get the heart into play, because we can most likely crew it next turn. Jadelight is most likely going to hit at least 1 spell. Okay, maybe it's not the mirror. Obviously, Treasure Map is not a card that's in our deck. So it's certainly not a 75 card mirror or anything of that nature. But it's just going to play out the Jadelight. We see Greenbelt Rampager. Not the highest impact of cards here. Huh. It's not bad, but it's also not great, right? I'm going to bin it. Okay, Blossoming Defense number 3. No, we don't. We also don't really want that. So bin both of those. We still get a 4/3. We can get in there. Next turn, we can land this Walking Ballista with 2 counters on it and get rid of the Llanowar Elves. So that's certainly one line that looks pretty appealing. And just a pass. Okay, that's good news. So, if we play the Ballista, yeah, we can't really easily crew this Heart of Kiran and attack with the Jadelight Ranger. I'm just going to attack for 4 and Ballista down the Llanowar Elves. It just seems like the right play to me. Just whenever you're able to get a clean creature off the battlefield and have your Walking Ballista still in play, it's really nice. Our opponent does have that treasure map, but they're just going to pack it in. So likely a mirror-ish type matchup. We don't know exactly, of course, what's in our opponent's deck. So have to do a little bit of guessing. But we're going to still stay big. Keep in our big stuff. Ghaltas should be great. Our flyers should be good. I'm going to board in a couple Thrashing Brontodons for sure. The Immortal Sun could be a way of going over the top of our opponent. Blossoming Defense. This may not be a removal heavy matchup, so Blossoming Defense may not be super necessary. We can take out some of the lower impact creatures. I'm gonna cut a Harvester, Branchwalker, some of that type of stuff. Yeah, so I'm not sure about Prey Upon. Certainly it could be good. So I'm gonna bring him in, assuming our opponent's mono green. Although we did see Treasure Map, could mean, but we saw multiple forests, so most likely a mono green deck. So some mono green on mono green action. Did board out a couple of these Greenbelts, but still have one in hand. Hand isn't perfect by any means. I am going to keep it because, yeah, it's four spells, 3 lands. Seems like kind of a keep, but doesn't have our best cards in the matchup like Ghalta or Verdurous Gearhulk. Nothing huge, but that was a good draw. So we can just immediately get our Llanowar Elves onto the battlefield. So the Brontodon can deal with some of the vehicles, or we saw Treasure Map, so it could deal with that. Looks like green-white. It's actually not straight mono-green. So it could be like token-based, or just green-white, stuff. Doesn't mean we boarded wrong though, just because it's not a mono green deck. Alright. Yeah, I think we just go for the Merfolk Branchwalker to set up our next turn. The second Walking Ballista, not exactly what the doctor ordered there, just because we don't need to. One would suffice here. Alright, yeah, Jadelight seems like a pretty solid play for next turn, so I'm going to top that. And that can potentially get us into our 4th land, and we can continue on rolling. So in terms of, okay, alright, so it's a Thrashing Brontodon. That actually makes sense in terms of a card our opponent would be bringing in for this matchup. Yeah, Ghalta is one of our best cards in these sorts of situations. We don't know. Our opponent may have some white removal in their deck. Rishkar is pretty good. We'll see if our opponent wants to stay back on defense. So yeah, they did elect to stay home there. So really no great attacks. I think I'm just going to play out this Greenbelt Rampager. That's going to set us up for Ghalta next turn. Unclear if that's going to be good enough, but it's what our hand is presenting. Could have also played the Brontodon, but I kind of like saving that, because it could be that our opponent has some type of enchantment removal for the Ghalta, and then we could say answer it with the Brontodon, something along those lines. Have it as a surprise factor. So yeah, this is almost like a black-green constrict. Well, we don't know what the white is for, actually. For sure, out of our opponent's deck. I was gonna say it's almost got the feel of a black-green constrictor deck, but it's not. It's green-white. Rishkar does make some sense with these sorts of creatures that we've been seeing. Here's a big spell. Is it a Walking Ballista, perhaps? That would be good. Okay. Yes, it is a Walking Ballista. So now does our opponent... Yeah, so our opponent's going to shoot down our Jadelight Ranger. That's unfortunate. Because they're trying to keep us off Ghalta this turn. And have done so successfully. Well, let's get in. Now get this Walking Ballista into play for 2. Not in love with shooting our ballista now, shooting our opponent's ballista right now, because they can then shoot ours and then we lose ours. On the other hand, theirs is more threatening because of Rishkar. But I'm gonna go with the pass here because we want the ballista to be able to get out Ghalta. So we'll see kind of how our opponent opts to navigate this turn. Okay, it's going to be an aggressive line, an attack for 7. Huh. So we could block and then ping. Ping the ballista, that is. Seems like a reasonable play. Alright, let's try that. It's going to save us some damage. It's going to mean the Ghalta is not coming down next turn, but... So we'll see how our opponent reacts to this. They still have 3 cards in hand. But we want to be getting their ballistas off the table because ballista is one of the late game trumps. Once our opponent has a bunch of mana, with Rishkar being able to, provide a mana, make a mana sink like Walking Ballista better. So here's the thing: if they pump, we can then ping the ballista in response. So that's probably what our opponent's thinking about. They have no way of actually being able to get rid of this Merfolk Branchwalker with their Walking Ballista without, an additional trick of some sort. Like, say, a Blossoming Defense. So... Okay, yep. So they're making the play we kind of presumed, shooting us for 1. Now we can go back at our opponent for 1 as well. So kind of a tit for tat thing. We save some damage, but now here it's gonna okay. Yep. There it is. There's Lyra. That is unfortunate. That is quite unfortunate. Yeah, the line we took was not where we wanted to be against Lyra. Ugh. That's frustrating. So yeah, I mean, if we keep the Ballista in play, we can potentially play Ghalta here, which wouldn't necessarily get the job done, by the way, but would put us in a better spot. Yeah, most white decks have gone to Lyra. Just being a Baneslayer Angel is really powerful, as it turns out. And we did not board in Plummet. We boarded in Prey Upon. That would be kind of our potential answer to this as our configuration stance. We didn't see the white mana, so there was no way to figure out Lyra. And even so, not sure it is actually correct to bring in Plummet, because our opponent presumably doesn't actually have other flyers in their deck. Yeah, the Mortal Sun is still a card I like as a way to win a long game, but our opponent has these Thrashing Brontodons, which are definitely annoying against a lot of our because a lot of our best cards are artifacts. A lot of our flyers are all artifacts. Another copy of Rishkar, that's an interesting decision for sure. The bottom line is that we really have no answer to Lyra, though. So our opponent looks to be setting up a pretty aggressive combat, which is smart. Sure, we can. We can throw those there, but no real way to get out of this. Yep, there's Shauna. Makes sense. Alright, so game 3 it is. I'm going to board out this other Blossoming Defense, some more Greenbelt Rampagers. Also not sure how much we want the Brontodons. We did see some amount of targets for them. Probably do just have to play the Plummet as a hedge against Lyra. Nissa is a card I don't mind on the play. So we get one more. I'm going to put in this Branchwalker as well. Alright, so yeah, it is the green-white deck that has... Yeah, there's a few different versions of green-white that have become pretty popular. So here, this hand is fine. Obviously, it would be great if we had a Llanowar Elves, because then we could just explode onto the board with a turn 2 Steel Leaf, which is what this deck loves to do. We're going to have to contend ourselves for a turn 2 Branchwalker, while our opponent actually does have the elf. So our opponent's kind of able to take back the play, in a sense, by having that. I think we just topped the Steel Leaf. I mean, we're able to go Steel Leaf into Steel Leaf. It's not necessarily, gonna win us the game, but it's something our opponent has to be at least worried about. And the Brontodon represents an answer to our Harvester, so I'm not gonna play that one out right now. Gonna play out the Steel Leaf Champion. Matches up well against our opponent's Brontodon. Certainly we don't want to see a card like Ixalan's Binding or Enchantment Removal. That would be pretty brutal. Our opponent hasn't actually played a white source yet, by the way. Here's Rishkar. So I think we'd be okay with trading the Steel Leaf Champion. But the issue with that is that we do kind of want to land Ghalta first. So I think we might just want to play Ghalta next turn. Because yes, we can actually do that. So yeah, I think you just want to get Ghalta into play as soon as possible in general. So now that it's in play, we're okay with attacking and doing some trading. Okay, so yeah, Brontodon for Steel Leaf is fine. And it kind of clears the way now for our big dino to just potentially just go the distance. I mean, our opponent only has green mana as of this moment. And if they're passing the turn, I mean, one of the reasons to play a monocolored deck like ours is these types of situations. We're not going to get color screwed. Like, our opponent has enough lands, they just don't have their colors. And that's why they are potentially losing this game. Like, they may have cards like Lyra, they might even have removal for Ghalta in hand, but we're just more consistent. Alright, so it looks like we are going to be able to go first here. Sweet. Let's hope to get a hand we can keep. I think this is good enough. Certainly not an amazing hand, but, you know, if we're able to get this Ghalta into play, we'll be doing things, but we're a little bit far away from that at the moment. Just going to start the Greenbelt Rampager. We can get that in next turn. It looks like we're probably up against a vehicle deck scene. Or I guess, or white aggro, but some sort of artifact aggressive deck. Considering what our opponent has led off on. Walking Ballista is a solid pickup, but I think we want to wait on that. I'm going to go with the Rampager here. Hold the Branchwalker for later. That gives us more information, and we know that the Greenbelt Rampager is going to be tough to get through. The Merfolk Branchwalker might end up just being a 2/1 creature, so I think this is where we want to be. Heart of Kiran is annoying. That is one of the tougher cards to deal with out of this mono green deck. Right now it can't be crewed though, so certainly going to start getting in there. I think we're looking for this to be a 3/2. Unfortunately, it is not, because we want to be looking at the total amount of power on our creatures very closely so that we can turbo out the Ghalta Primal Hunter. Although presumably our opponent has, you know, cards like Unlicensed Disintegration. This seems to be Mardu vehicles based on everything we've seen so far. So no attack with the Bomat card. So we have a bit of a decision here. We can play Walking Ballista for 2 and shoot down the Bomat. Or we can play Branchwalker and Ballista. I think we wanna attack here. It seems like our opponent is reluctant to trade the Bowmat for the Branchwalker. Maybe they're willing to. Okay. I guess they are, which is kind of bad news for us, but sometimes you have to make plays and hope your opponent, makes the choice that you want them to make. So we're definitely going to top the Skysovereign. And yeah, I think we just make good use of our mana and also play the Walking Ballista. So Skysovereign next turn can shoot down Scrap Heap Scrounger and be a blocker for Heart of Kiran. So that was one of the cards we definitely wanted to be seeing. Also, we have 7 power in play. So we can potentially play Ghalta as early as next turn. So plenty of options. Now we have the opportunity to get rid of this Toolcraft Exemplar. I'm just going to do that. I should have actually waited till the trigger was on the stack. That's my fault. But it seemed like our opponent did not have another creature, so they're forced to crew with the Scrounger, which means the Scrounger isn't attacking. Alright, so this turn, I think, well, we're pretty locked into playing out our Skysovereign. I like getting rid of the Scrap Heap Scrounger. And yeah, I think we want to still be getting aggressive. So let's go for this. Just trying to close the door as quickly as possible on our opponent. Reason why I like getting rid of the Scrounger there is because it ties up our opponent's mana even to bring that guy back, which is a pretty big deal. Like we're threatening a lethal attack potentially next turn. So if our opponent taps Aspire of Industry, then all of a sudden they don't have access to Unlicensed Disintegration. So here's a Karn's Scion of Urza. That's not bad, but it also may not do it for our opponent here. It is a nice card with Heart of Kiran. I will say that much. So we can play Ghalta next turn. Use that to crew the Skysovereign. And then if our opponent attacks with the Bowmat, we certainly have lethal. But it looks like no attack with the Bowmat card, so that's smart. But I think we're still in a good spot. We're probably still going to make that same play. So, play Ghalta. And crew Skysovereign. This forces, I believe, a chump block with Heart of Kiran. There's no real reason to attack Karn. So let's see. We could kill Karn with the trigger, but that seems pretty risky. Yeah, not gonna do that. So we'll get the construct off the board. This allows Heart of Kiran to get crewed. And so our opponent basically has to chump a Branch Walker and can eat a Rampager, but then goes to 2. So we'll see what they have here. They would need basically an unlicensed disintegration. I'm going to put the Clifftop Retreat into their hand. So yeah, I figured they would jump off with the Heart of Kiran, I guess. But there was nothing there was no better option we had there, by the way. Besides that attack. There's no way of beating an unlicensed disintegration. So that's like the one card that does beat us here, unfortunately. Even leaving the Skysovereign back, we would be vulnerable to that card. But okay, so we were able to get that one. Sweet. So in terms of sideboarding, I like having the ability to mess with our opponent's vehicles. So the Brontodons, the Thrashing Brontodons, we want those. And we're kind of trading like 3 mana cards for other 3 mana cards. Scavengers are good because they can mess with our opponent's Scrap Heap Scroungers. Arborback Stomper is a pretty good top end play. So cards I'm going to shave on. Blossoming Defense on the draw can be kind of awkward. Same with Jadelight Ranger. Ghalta is good, but you really never want to draw 2 copies of Ghalta. So those are pretty straightforward cuts. I mean, we can use our flying vehicles to basically trade with our opponent's flying stuff. I'm gonna cut a couple copies of Greenbelt Rampager as well, because while they're good, they're slow, and you don't really want to draw multiples of them. So this is a fine hand, I think. On the draw, pretty similar to the mono red matchup, where we're crossing our fingers a little bit, hoping that our opponent doesn't come out of the gates too strong. And Branchwalker is really a nice way to set up our turn 3, because a lot of the time, well, it's going to help find you that play that you really want. Heart of Kiran, I think we want a Branchwalker first. We want a Branchwalker this turn, reevaluate for next turn. There's a Brontodon. I like that quite a bit. Alright, so our opponent does have a solid start. Heart of Kiran into Scrounger. So we're going to take the hit. And then we have a bit of a decision in terms of we have the Brontodon that we know about on top of our library. And we also have this Heart of Kiran. I think I'm going to go Heart of Kiran. And just hold it on defense. We can use the Branchwalker to crew it. So it might mean that our opponent doesn't attack, but okay, so if they attack, they're either offering up the trade or they have a card like Fatal Push here. It also could have a second copy of Heart of Kiran. Okay, a Braid, similar to a Fatal Push. That makes sense. And so we're going to take the 4. But now we can play out this Thrashing Brontodon. And get in. The Brontodon blocks the Scrounger quite nicely. And next turn we're well equipped with either Gearhulk or Skysovereign. So the late game seems to favor us. Okay, so our opponent is going to crew up this Heart of Kiran. I think we just want to get rid of it and preserve our life total. It does suck to lose the Brontodon, considering it's getting us closer to Ghalta. Okay, here's Karn. So I'm wondering what our opponent's actually going to elect to do with Karn. Alright, there's the Construct. So, a couple options here. I think we want to get that Karn off the board. The question is how to do it. We could also just play Verdurous Gearhulk. But I think we just Skysovereign, shoot the Construct down, and then attack Karn with the Branchwalker. Definitely a bunch of options, but this seems like the best one. Gets rid of a creature and the Planeswalker all in one swoop. And like the last game, yeah, Skysovereign looks pretty good. So we'll see what our opponent can come up with here. If they pass, we have to think about cards like Unlicensed Disintegration. Alright, there's Lyra. That is very good against us. Not necessarily a card I was expecting to see by any means. But it is going to cause us some issues. So we have the Gearhulk. We can play. Got a few options. We're at 9 life though, which is the dangerous part of all this. We would like to be able to get in with the Skyship, but I feel like leaving it back is probably the safest option. So we can crew it and play Verdurous Gearhulk. Which seems pretty good. Alright, let's try that. And then the question once again becomes, well, there's two questions. Do we now attack with the Skysovereign? Is certainly one of the questions. If we do, we can get rid of the Scrounger, which is a pretty big deal. So I think we want to put at least a couple counters. I'm going to go 2 and 2. So if we get rid of the Scrounger, we can then use the Death Gorge Scavenger as a way to help buffer our life total again. So I think I'm going to attack and get this Scrap Heap Scrounger off the board. And this opens up the potential for us to lethal our opponent next turn, depending on what they have. It's definitely a risky play, But keep in mind, our opponent doesn't have creatures in the graveyard right now. So that Scrounger can't easily be brought back. But if they have Unlicensed, that would just be game over. Okay, yep, so it was a 1-mana artifact into Unlicensed, which, to be fair, if we keep our Skysovereign back and get Unlicensed, that's also going to be really bad for us, so that is going to force a game 3. But we're going to be on the play, so that's good. We don't have a ton of answers to Lyra, but we do have a Plummet in the sideboard, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. The deck is still quite threat dense, which is how I like it. And that's basically what this deck is. It's just a bunch of high impact creatures. Go ahead and cut a Branch Walker. Blossoming Defense is a little bit better on the play because you can sometimes set up more so that you have that 1 open mana to protect your creature. Alright, so we're taking out some of the Explore stuff, which is Explore is a mechanic generally that's best in grindier matchups. Okay, yeah, we have a Llanowar Elves, so that's going to help us get off the ground. We don't have a 3-mana creature, but the Branch Walker should help set us up. And then turn 3 Ballista can shoot down things like Toolcraft or Bomat Courier. Interesting that our opponent is leading on Spire of Industry, though. Oh, wow, okay. Well, there's Steel Leaf right off the top, so let's go ahead and play that. Easy game, right? And there's really no way to get rid of this right away. So our opponent is going to just play a Heart of Kiran. So I'm going to play the Hash Up Oasis and this Branch Walker. Oh wow, Ghalta on top. Sign me up for that. If we can get that guy down, that can just end the game in a hurry. And this is what this deck wants to do. Smash for 6. Now our opponent is just in a world of hurt because they're just on the defensive. Like, we had our good draw on the play. Without something like an Unlicensed right now to get rid of the Steel Leaf champion, we have access to Ghalta on our next turn. Okay, so sure, that's fine. So we have, let's see, 6-7 power. So Ghalta is going to cost 5. Yeah, gonna play it. Ballista would probably be enough to seal this game up anyways, but why not play the Ghalta for good measure, right? And this is where our opponent hits the concede button. Sometimes you get the more interesting matches. This one we just smashed. Okay, so this time we are going to be on the draw. But we have a Llanowar Elves, so yeah. Most Llanowar Elves plus other spells, hands. I like keeping. Okay. Looks like our opponent is thinking along the same lines we are. So we're just going to play out our Llanowar Elves. And there is a Sun Petal Grove. So quite possibly green-white again. Yep, going to take this hit. Okay, but it looks like a slightly different version of green-white than the last one we played, because we weren't playing... We did see Merfolk Branchwalker in our last match. Here, I'm just going to play the Ronus out there. Ronus is a good way to help power out the Ghalta. And, okay, so it's going to be Shalai, Voice of Plenty, that goes to the graveyard for our opponent. So they top Merfolk Branchwalker, then they got rid of Shalai. So I wonder if they have a third land or not. If not, I like our spot. And they don't. Okay, so we have 6 power. We're not quite ready to get that Ghalta into play. I think I like... We can't unfortunately get this online right now. We would need a creature with power 4 or greater. I like just getting the Greenbelt Rampager into play. It's going to block well against what our opponents got going on. It could be, admittedly, that we should have just played the Greenbelt Rampager last turn and then played Ronus this turn. But if we had drawn like a 4 power creature, then this play would have been very good. I still like our chances a lot, because Ghalta's just going to close the game out very quickly. That is our primary game plan at this point. And there's no reason to believe that it's not going to work out. So we have 9 power now. So I'm going to play the... Well, yeah, I'm going to play the Merfolk Branchwalker. No reason to not play this game so that we always have that Blossoming Defense available. So slam Ghalta, make a pretty conservative attack with just the Ronus. Our opponent takes the hit. And don't expect any sort of sweeper. Okay, so Ixalan's binding, but we have the Blossoming Defense. So we're just going to use that. And that's probably just game over, actually. Yep, okay. So, different version, different take on green-white than the last version we played against. Certainly, we could still be playing against Lyra. Not sure that actually means we want Plummet, though. Still like boarding out some of the lower impact cards. I like the Immortal Sun as an alternative, essentially an alternative win condition. Blossoming Defense can be good. Bronzodon, Thrashing Bronzodon is a card we probably want to go to, considering we've already seen Ixalan's Binding. So, let's do some shaving. Fine with cutting a couple Greenbelt Rampagers. Prey Upon is a fine card. Versatile. It's versatile. Like if our opponent is bringing in a big creature like Lyra, it can be an answer there. So let's try this configuration. You always have to be a little bit worried about the 3-drop slot with this deck because there's just so many 3-mana cards. I think I'm going to try this. One of the weaker hands I've seen with this deck. But seems like the upside is there. That was a good draw. So, Yeah, Heart of Kiran into Steel Leaf Champion makes the hand look better for sure. And the deck just has a lot of high power creatures. There's a Llanowar Elves, so we could just say cash in our Ballista to get rid of it, but I think we want to just go Heart now and then just try to get pretty aggressive. Walking Ballista is generally more of a play like turn 4 when you have the ability to make X equal to 2. Put 2 counters on it. What's this going to be? Okay, if this is a Thopterus. I was about to say, that's actually better for us than Ixalan's Binding because we have a second copy of Heart of Kiran. So now, well, we drew a Llanowar Elves, so I think we just go Heart plus Elves. That to me is the most straightforward play. See what our opponent does. Obviously, we don't want to see a card like Lyra at this point, or like just a high impact card. We want to be seeing. We can afford maybe another removal if our opponent does have another removal spell for the heart. That's something I think we can manage. Nissa. That's an interesting one. I don't actually know how good it is here. Our opponent can clock us with this Plains, deal us some damage that way. Alright, so that's kind of annoying. We don't actually have a great way of taking this Nissa off the board this turn. So we can play Steel Leaf or Walking Ballista. The Walking Ballista would be for 2. But the upside to the Walking Ballista play is we could also get rid of something on our opponent's side of the board with it. Huh. We could also yeah. Alright, I think I like the Ballista play the most. Because it cuts our opponent off mana, which is pretty important. Still want to go after this Nissa. But I think we just leave it in play. Just take out this Llanowar Elves, leave the Nissa in play. We can crew the heart next turn with our Steel Leaf. Our opponent, sure, can deal us another 5 if they want to, but that's, not that threatening. So the Nissa we should be able to get it off the board next turn. They might just be using this for additional mana to power out a big spell. Angel of Sanctions. Okay. On Heart of Kiran. Interesting. Okay, so we actually have an answer in hand for that. In Steel Leaf plus Prey Upon. And drew this Blossoming Defense. So a few different options, actually. I think I like now attacking Nissa. Well, okay, so if we play Steel Leaf, we can use the Blossoming Defense just as a way to get the Nissa off the table. Then our opponent's down to only 4 lands. Assuming we also Prey Upon. I think we just do everything. Yeah. We could also cash in the Ballista, but I think is worse than keeping the Ballista around and using the Blossoming. Ballista's pretty good here. I mean, we've got a bunch of mana, so it's a nice mana sink, a nice threat to have in play. And now our opponent's certainly on the back foot. Okay. So there is Shalai. But we can attack through it. Oh, okay. That is what we wanted. So, yeah, we have a great turn here. It's going to be hard for our opponent to come back from this turn. We can fire up. Oh, I guess that was kind of a mistake. Well, let's see. Okay. I was thinking we could crew. We could do everything we want to. But I guess then the Llanowar Elves would be tapped. That kind of sucks. Maybe should not have put this counter on the Walking Ballista. That might have been a mistake. So we can crew. Yeah, okay. So I made a mistake there by putting the counter on the Ballista. So I guess what we do is we just crew the Ballista with the Steel Leaf and then still play Ghalta. It's not the most elegant of plays. I apologize. What we should have done here is just not add the counter to the Ballista. And then we can just play Ghalta and crew the Heart of Kiran with the Ghalta. In any case, we're probably just going to win this game either way. Okay, yeah. That is not that scary. Alright, I guess our opponent's creatures are hexproof. And our opponents, we can't actually do the whole pinging thing with Walking Ballista. I'm gonna run this Jadelight out there as a way to help crew this Heart of Kiran. Bin that. Do we want a second Jadelight? Sure. Okay, so we can crew Hearts with our Jadelight. So if we attack with everything, what happens? Our opponent can make a... Okay. Yep. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and go for this 5-0 here in this league. On the draw, mediocre hand. I'm going to keep it. Not really happy about it, but also think, so far... These medium hands have worked out better than straight up mulliganing. And our opponent did end up mulliganing, so I think we're still a favorite. Once again, up against some sort of green deck. We'll see what else is going on. Just a forest for our opponent, so this may not be much of a game. Could play the Ballista. I don't think I'm gonna do that though. Just gonna go for this Greenbelt Rampager, just to get some energy. Next turn we can play the Harvester. We can get some crewing going on. It looks like this may actually be a straight up mirror. We played against a couple green-white decks. Pretty confident this is gonna be a mirror, considering we did just see a forest roll off the top of our opponent's deck. Just there. I'm going to go for the Harvester. So our opponent might have Steel Leaf here, the 5-4. That would be the card I would be most afraid of from this spot. Ronus is actually really good too. So I take that back. Ronus might be better for our opponent, but the fact that the Harvester does give us the ability to get a life cushion is quite relevant. I think I'm going to go Walking Ballista, though. So Ballista for 2. I guess we could. I guess another option would be to Ballista for 1. Nah, I'm gonna Ballista for 2. Ballista for 2. We may not actually want to use up our energy. Well, we definitely want to use up our energy to crew, but we may not want to use up our energy by casting the Greenbelt Rampager. That's what I'm trying to say. Because it gives us, by having the Greenbelt Rampager in hand, it gives us access to energy whenever we want it. So it allows us to potentially crew the Harvester every turn, which can allow us to really race the Ronus profitably. So we'll see if this is going to be a 4-power creature or not. Now we have a decision. I think I'm just going to get rid of this, though, because we have a second one. I'm going to get rid of this with that Explore trigger on the stack. And, yeah, so our opponent found Ronus's Monument. So it is the Monument version of the Mono Green deck. So not a straight mirror, if you will. So, a couple options here. I think I'm gonna play the Greenbelt Rampager this turn. It is gonna mean we're gonna go down to 2 energy. I mean down to 1 energy rather, but I think that's okay considering our opponent did not attack last turn, because we're really actually hoping that our opponent does make this block, because then we could. Okay, but our opponent's not gonna fall for it. That sucks. But I still like having the 3/4 on the battlefield. It's certainly valuable. We want these kind of, random dorks out there. I'm gonna keep the Ballista still. Okay, so the heart gets crewed, and then our opponent does actually have Ghalta. That's really bad news. Ugh, wow. Okay. So our opponent bashes in for 4. And then has Ghalta Primal Hunter. Waiting in the wings. Well, I'm going to crew up the Harvester and get in there. See if our opponent does block this time or not. Because we kind of have to try to end this game as quickly as possible. No blocks, though, from our opponent. Okay, so we have this Jadelight Ranger. We can certainly run out there. I guess we do. I guess we play that and play Ballista for 1. Doesn't feel good by any means. Do we want a Greenbelt Rampager? So the benefit of this is that it can give us some more energy. But I think we're just dying on the following turn anyways. Alright, I'm just gonna put that in the graveyard, put this Llanowar Elves in the graveyard. Play Walking Ballista for 1. And pass the turn. So, presumably our opponent comes in with at least Ghalta. We're going to have to take that hit from the Ghalta. So, then we have these 2 blossoming defenses. And maybe our opponent uses a Hash-Up Oasis. Okay, there is a Hash-Up Oasis being used. So we can afford to potentially take... Alright, so this is actually our opponent is going for this Heart of Kiran. This would bring us to 1. The play is a bit weird, though. It doesn't make sense unless our opponent actually has the blossoming defense. That's kind of what it feels like, right? Because otherwise we just have lethal. So it would only make sense if our opponent actually has the blossoming defense. I believe. I guess we play around blossoming defense, right? We throw Greenbelt Rampager in front of this Ghalta, take our medicine, and our opponent is just going to concede. We did have lethal, I believe, on the crackback with the blossoming defenses, but I'm not sure our opponent was supposed to concede there before actually seeing what we had. Also not sure. Yeah, that was weird. That concession was weird. It felt like we were in a bad spot and right up until our opponent conceded the game. But we'll take it. So I think in these green matchups, the 1 copy of Immortal Sun is good. Prey Upon seems pretty solid also. We know that our opponent has those monuments. So we may want some amount of Thrash and Brontodons at least. Arrowac Stomper, just a big fatty, possible as well. I think we take out Blossoming Defense. We just want a bunch of threats. I'm gonna take out 1 Greenbelt Rampager as well, and then a couple Explorer creatures. Let's go with this configuration. And yeah, there's a couple different ways to build the mono green deck. One is with the monument. Our version does not have it. There's a lot of 3-mana cards in the deck, so you have to pick and choose. I like this hand. Yeah, I like this hand. Our opponent's having some... I mean, we would love a Llanowar Elves is the card. We would love to have a Llanowar Elves, but once we don't have the Llanowar Elves, I think the hand is pretty fine. It's a slow Ghalta type of hand. So if our opponent has a fast draw... Okay, so Scavenger Grounds means our opponent isn't... Okay, but there's Ronus, so I was going to say our opponent isn't playing the 5/4, but Ronus is quite good. So I think we just play Heart of Kiran because it hits for 4 next turn. We can play We can hope our opponent doesn't have a 4-power creature here. Because if our opponent does not have one, they cannot attack with the Ronus, and that's a big swing if our opponent does not have a 4-power creature. So Branchwalker means probably no 4-power creature. Verdurous Gearhulk in the bin, so our opponent's probably looking for lands. I think we want to try to get aggressive now. Yeah. So I'm going to play the Steel Leaf Champion. Bash with Heart, and we can kind of do a similar play that our opponent did. Oh yeah, and by the way, when I meant a slow Ghalta, I meant turn 4 Ghalta. I hope that was clear when I said that. Because yeah, that's what we've set up. That's what our opponent did to us last game, if I recall correctly. So, alright, now our opponent has the Steel Leaf Champion. They can crash in. And this is a game. Because our opponent gets in for 8. We can play Branchwalker on our turn and hope to hit a spell. Okay, actually our opponent's going to leave the Ronus on defense, respecting the Steel Leaf Champion, essentially. So the Branchwalker is essentially a free play here, because we can Branchwalker plus Ghalta. I think we keep the Walking Ballista. We crew up. So we have the aerial advantage now. We have the huge dino. Our opponent does have the indestructible creature in Ronus. So Heart of Kiran we have an answer to. So I think we may just want to cash in our Brontodon, and as weird as it is, just not get in this turn. And it looks like that is just going to do it. Unfortunately, a pretty quick match, but our opponent just kind of realized the writing was on the wall, and to be fair, yeah, it was. That's kind of how these mirrors can go. It's just kind of goldfishing. Our opponent might have conceded a little prematurely, but hey, that's going to do it for the league. 5-0.